So, hello all. In the previous lecture, we were discussing about covalent bond. What was a covalent bond? Basically, a bond formed by mutual sharing of electron between two atoms, right? So, now imagine a scenario like we understood covalent bond with a story of you and your friend needing to buy a pen of costing 10 rupees, where you were having 5 rupees and your friend was having 5 rupees, right? So, taking it a bit further, now suppose you and your friend, like one of you is more powerful than the other, right? So, what happens now? The pen that was initially mutually belonging to both of you, now your friend, suppose, now let us assume your friend turns out to be more powerful than you. What will happen? Now you both are keeping the pen in between, you were sharing the pen. Now your friend becomes more selfish and your friend is trying to pull that pen towards itself because your friend is more powerful than you. So what will happen? You will also not leave the pen, you are also still holding on to the pen. So what will happen? The pen that was initially kept in the middle belonging to both you and your friend now is slightly shifted towards your friend, not completely, but slightly shifted more towards your friend, because your friend here turns out to be more powerful, right? Now let us relate it to our bonds here. So initially covalent bond was formed between two atoms, suppose A and B. They were having equal strength, equal need for electrons. So that bond was, or the pair of electron was mutually shared between A and B. Now a second case where again covalent bond was formed between A and B, no doubt, but that is here B turns out to be somewhat more powerful than A. What happens? B now pulls this electron cloud, which was initially mutually shared between A and B, more towards itself. Okay, B turns out needy, greedy, pulls this electron more towards itself. So, and A is also not going to leave the electron, right, because they are covalently bonded. A is also in need of electrons. Therefore, A will not allow this electron cloud to be entirely taken up by B. So, what will happen? B will pull this electron clouds and this electron cloud will be slightly shifted more towards B. Initially, the cloud which was uniformly shared between A and B now somewhat looks like this, right? It is shifted more towards B because B here is more powerful than A. So what will happen? Electrons means negative charge. As electron density or electron cloud is shifted towards B, therefore B will have a negative charge, but this electron is not purely shifted, is not entirely taken up by B, it is just partially shifted. Therefore a delta positive is written, and delta signifies partial. Here a partial negative charge is acquired by B because the electron cloud is not uniformly shared between A and B, rather B being more powerful slightly withdraws or tries to draw the electron cloud more towards itself. Now what will happen to B? A. In case of A, the electron clouds are taken away from A, means negative charge is shifted away from A. Therefore, A will be somewhat in need of or in deficiency of electrons, deficiency of negative charge, that means positive charge. So, A will have a positive charge, but will this positive charge be a complete positive charge? Obviously no, because the electron clouds are not completely taken away from A, rather it is just partially shifted from A. Therefore, again a partial positive charge will be developed on A. Now see what happens. There is two charge centers developed. One is positive charge, one is negative charge. We say two poles are formed in case of this AB molecule where there is difference of power in between A and B. So this is called, two poles are developed, therefore it is called a polar molecule, and this kind of covalent bond is called as a polar covalent bond. Polar covalent bond. Okay. Now what happens here when the electron cloud was mutually shared between A and B? Obviously when it was mutually shared, there was no charge centers developed between A and B, and there was no partial positive or negative charge scenario in this case, because this electron cloud is mutually and happily shared between A and B, right. So there are no charge centers developed, therefore this molecule is called a non-polar molecule, non-polar molecule, and this bond is called as a non-polar covalent bond. Got it? The polar covalent bond and non-polar covalent bond. Now we are lately we are talking more about power of the molecule, strength of molecule. B is more powerful than A, therefore it is drawing or withdrawing electron density towards itself. What is that power? This question might be coming to your mind, right? What is that power and how we determine that power? Okay. So in chemistry, that power is termed as electronegativity. Okay. In chemistry, that power is termed as electronegativity. What is electronegativity? Wait, I am writing it properly. Electronegativity. Yeah. So what is electronegativity? Electronegativity is basically defined as the tendency of an atom, to attract the shared pair of electrons more towards itself. Okay. Electronegativity is basically a tendency of what? Attracting the shared pair. If there are two atoms bonded to each other covalently, then there will be at least one shared pair of electron, minimum of at least one shared pair of electrons. So if in between them A and B, suppose I am saying B is more powerful or B is more electronegative, then that will attract this shared pair of electron more towards itself. This power is called as electronegativity. It is basically a calculated term. Okay. It is basically compared between two atoms. Okay. It cannot be derived, it is basically a calculated term, can be found out in comparison or in comparing the strength of A and B, and if you observe the periodic table, then the strength of or the electronegativity along the period, it increases and down the group it decreases. So basically electronegativity increases along the period and decreases down the group. So basically if I am saying a bond is formed between oxygen and hydrogen, a covalent bond is formed between oxygen and hydrogen, then what will happen? Hydrogen lies at the top of the periodic table, right? It does not entirely belong to group 1, but it lies somewhere over there. So and oxygen lies in group 16, okay, right, almost towards the left of the periodic table. So therefore oxygen is having more electronegativity as compared to hydrogen. Therefore oxygen will have a delta negative charge on itself, hydrogen will have a delta positive charge. Similarly nitrogen and hydrogen also, this will be delta negative, this will be delta positive. This is basically the difference, or if whenever there is an electronegative or electronegativity difference between two atoms, there will be development of polarization of charge, that is one will be having a negative charge and the one will be having a positive charge. Okay. So, this is basically electronegativity, and now we have dealt with what is electronegativity, what is a polar covalent bond, what is a non-polar covalent bond, what is the like separation of charge, what is the creation of dipole and all. Okay. So, we are clear on this. Next we will move on. If I give you two examples, right. For example, I am giving you NaBr and AlCl3 or AlBr3, let us keep the anion same, NaBr and AlBr3, okay. Sodium bromide and aluminum bromide. Okay. So, as you can see, there is difference in electronegativity, and mostly we know that sodium is a metal, aluminum is a metal, bromine is a non-metal. So, a bond formed between metal and a non-metal is mostly ionic, right. But here, okay, and we have also learnt ionic compounds have very high melting and boiling point. So, if I compare sodium bromide, if I see sodium bromide, then of course, sodium bromide satisfy the property of ionic bond, and it is having very high ionic, very high melting and boiling point. Somewhat its boiling point is somewhat around 400 something Kelvin. So, it is very high, but if I compare or if I see the experimental boiling point of AlBr3, it is coming to be only around 96 to 100, which is very less for a ionic bond. So, now question arises, AlBr3 is a ionic compound, aluminum and bromine is having a ionic bond in between them, but how come the boiling point is so less? It has to be very high as in order to satisfy the properties of ionic bond, right. Now, the concept came that this bond, the bond formed between aluminum and bromine or 1 aluminum and 3 bromine must not be entirely ionic. Now, what does that mean? Either a bond is purely ionic or covalent, either a bond will be ionic or covalent, but what is that it is not entirely ionic? We got a new concept here, right. So, there is a rule called Fazan's rule, okay. Fazan's rule. What is Fazan's rule now? Okay. According to Fazan, no bond is entirely or purely ionic, no bond is purely covalent, right. Understood what Fazan said? No bond is purely ionic or covalent, and mostly Fazan talked about the covalent character in ionic bond. Covalent character in ionic bond. Isn't it interesting? In the first lecture, we talked purely about ionic bond, what is an ionic bond, how it is formed, its properties. In the second lecture, we talked about covalent bond, what is covalent bond, how it is formed, and its basically its distinguishing properties and how ionic and covalent bonds are different. Now, in the third lecture, we are saying no bond is purely ionic and purely covalent, like an ionic bond is also not purely ionic, right. So, basically Fazan is talking about covalent character in ionic bond. Let us see how it is formed. Basically, ionic bond, if we see, ionic bond is formed between a cation and an anion, right. So, how a cation is formed? When an atom loses electron, exactly. How an anion is formed? When an atom gains electron. So, if you compare the atomic size between an atom, okay, I am drawing a table, this is the atom, this will be cation size, here it will be anion size. Okay. When an atom gains electron, it adds an electron to its shell. What will happen to its size? It will form an anion obviously, but what will happen to the size of the anion in comparison to the atom? obviously it will increase. So, size of the anion is greater than the atom. What will happen to the size of the cation? It will be smaller than the atom, because cation is formed after the loss of electrons, right. So, it will be smaller than the atom. Okay. As the ion or the cation gradually decreases in size than the initial parent atom after the loss of electron, will it be the case that the outermost shell will come closer to the nucleus? Yes. In case of sodium, if I am seeing, its configuration was 281, there was a nucleus surrounded by orbits. Now, from the first orbits electrons are removed, so the first orbit is entirely gone out of the scene. Second orbit is there, first orbit is gone out of the scene, it becomes 2,8, right, this one is not there. Now, this outermost shell again becomes closer to the nucleus, because previously the outermost shell was the third shell, little farther from the nucleus. The second, after losing one electron, after forming the cation, the size gradually decreases because the nuclear force on the outermost shell increases, right. So, due to increase in the nuclear force, the size of the cation becomes smaller than the parent atom. Now, what happens in case of anion? After gaining one electron, the size will increase, distance from the nucleus will increase, and nuclear force will gradually decrease. As the distance from the nucleus increases, the nuclear pull or the nuclear force on the outermost shell gradually decreases, or the nucleus control, the control of the nucleus on the outermost shell decreases. So, that will happen in case of anion. Now, there is a concept of effective nuclear charge. What is effective nuclear charge? Okay. Effective nuclear charge is the actual charge of the nucleus that is actually being applied on the outermost shell. Okay. It is not the experimental or observed it is obviously the experimental thing, it is not observed actually, but what happens exactly when the size gradually decreases in case of cation, the effective nuclear charge is increasing. Like effective nuclear charge is actually what amount of nuclear pull the atom is or the outermost shell is experiencing, okay. What it should experience and what it is ideally, like what it should ideally experience and what it is actually experiencing. So, what it is actually experiencing is effective nuclear charge, okay. So, effective nuclear charge on the cation increases and on the anion it decreases. So, initially when an ionic bond is formed, we drew this circle diagram, right. Why? Because we assumed the charge distribution is uniform or spherical. Now, after all this we can safely conclude here this diagram, the cation after losing electron or the atom after losing electron forms the cation which is smaller in size, and the anion after gaining electrons forms negative which is larger in size. These are spherical charge distribution, but actually what happens when this charge will increase, positive charge will increase or effective nuclear charge will increase, then what will happen? It will basically apply a force on the outermost shell of the anion. Now, this anion being negatively charged, will not it be drifted slightly or will not it be drifted towards the positive charge cation? Will it be that same symmetrical spherical charge distribution? No, because the nuclear pull or the effective nuclear charge of the cation forces it to destabilize or distort its shape from spherical charge distribution to kind of unsymmetrical shape, right. So, again you can say the cation has a polarizing power, okay. The cation has a polarizing power and anion has a property called polarizability. Polarizability of anion and polarizing power of the cation. Stronger or higher the polarizing power of the cation and higher the polarizability of the excuse me. So higher the polarizability of the anion, then stronger will be the effective nuclear charge, or more will be the distortion of this negative charge or anion towards the cation, right. Now, what factor will determine the polarizing power of the cation? See, the polarizing power is determined by a symbol phi, and it is basically directly proportional to charge and inversely proportional to radius. As the charge on the cation goes on increasing, suppose a cation was in a +1 state, goes to +2, +3. How that +1, +2, +3 stages will be achieved? If it continuously goes on losing electron, obviously as much the cation or the atom will lose electron, gradually its size will proportionately go on decreasing, because the effective nuclear charge will increase. So, fair enough, phi is directly proportional to charge. Now, radius also, greater is the distance from the nucleus of the outermost shell, lesser will be the hold of the nucleus on the outermost shell. Therefore, if radius is smaller, then it will be directly or more directly in contact with the nucleus. Obviously, the size will be smaller, and therefore, the polarizing power will be high. So, the polarizing power symbolized by phi is charge by radius. It is directly proportional to charge, inversely proportional to radius, right. So, greater the polarizing power of the cation and greater is the polarizing power of the anion, more will be the covalent character in the ionic bond. Why covalent character? See, initially what was ionic bond? Ionic bond was a electrostatic force of attraction between ions, right. But gradually what happens, as the size of the atom or the cation is getting smaller and smaller and the size of the anion is increasing, it is getting more and more distorted towards the cation. Then what happens? This electrostatic force of attraction somewhat turns out to be mutual sharing, somewhat, not exactly, but to some extent it comes closer to the cation, and there is some scene of actual sharing of electrons, not exactly actual sharing of electrons, but due to the closer proximity it somewhat appears like the two atoms are like nearly closer to each other, right. So, there is a development of a covalent character in the ionic bond. How? If the polarizing power of the cation is higher and polarizability of an ion is higher, then there is greater covalent character in the ionic bond. Now, if the nature or greater is the covalent bond, then more it will be drifted away from the ionic character. Like basically, if a pure ionic compound was having higher boiling point and melting point, the compound where the covalent character will be more or slightly more than the pure ionic character, obviously there the melting point and boiling point will be lesser than the pure ionic form. So, here by Fazan's rule we can determine the nature of ionic bond, the which compound is as to which is more ionic and which is less ionic, which will have more boiling point, lesser boiling point, the solubility aspects, these all can be easily determined if we understand Fazan's rule. So, these all will basically come under the application of Fazan's rule, which we will be dealing in the next module. So, for now I hope you understand this Fazan's rule completely. Thank you.